Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion, and today we have a new blog. New day, new blog. That's how it works. So, magic in Total War Warhammer 3. The Storm Cometh. Okay, it's very biblical, almost. Anyway, so, Ben Barrett, once again, thanks for the info. The winds of change blow through Total War Warhammer 3, and all your armies will feel the impact, or, well, at least the ones with spellcasters. As part of our general update of game systems in Warhammer 3, we're tweaking the Winds of Magic, power reserves, casting spells, and even adding a whole new battle rule set for particularly magical encounters in the realm of chaos. Storm of Magic. So this sounds like a lot. A new battle type, almost. Or battle modifier, kind of. We'll get to it. So first, let's detail the changes we've made to the Winds of Magic system, which, while not a full overhaul, should make using spellcasters a more enjoyable prospect, with more interesting consequences and greater strategic decision-making. The core is that the armies will now have a variable Winds of Magic reserve pool that increases or decreases based on the strength of the winds in that area. So here's some examples. So first off, Winds of Magic is something that basically is sort of on the campaign map. It's just ignored. Who pays attention to that? Like, seriously, it never makes you think, oh, shall I do a battle there or not? You just do it. It's irrelevant. You know, it bears absolutely no relation to your decisions in a game of Total War. It can be completely ignored. You'll have some magic in a battle. And generally you don't even notice if it's a bit lower or a bit higher, because most of it is based on the random level ups that your spellcasters have got. You don't even really notice it. It's a completely pointless thing that it could just be assigned to a random dice roll, because it essentially is on the campaign map assigned to a random dice roll. It just sort of tells you the dice roll ahead of time, but is mostly irrelevant, so you ignore it anyway, and can be undone by an actual dice roll when you start a battle. It's a pointless thing. Nice intention, but it's been pointless up until now, hopefully. Because, yeah, it's just the most overlooked system ever. So I love that they're overhauling it. So first off, a basic early game starter army begins with 50 reserves of magic. It is in a region with blowing winds of magic, providing +0 reserves per turn. Assuming nothing special happens, it remains that way. The same army moves into a region with calm winds of magic, which reduces by 10 per turn. It will have 40 reserves at the start of the next turn and will continue to drop the longer it remains here. If it is a demon faction army, it will eventually start to receive debuffs, with the opposite true at the other end of the scale. More on that in a moment. So, basically, the winds of magic will move depending on your reserve will basically diminish or increase depending on where you're stood. And so if you're in a very sort of torrential area, I guess, then you can have more magic to use, but it'll go up and down over time, and rather than like a static number, which is what we had in Warhammer 1 and 2. So it'd just be, oh yeah, you'll have this many reserves because you're in this area, though it never really explained that, because there was nothing really to interact with it, you know, so it didn't really amount to much. But here, hopefully it'll give you a clear indication of how much you actually have in the tank on the campaign map, rather than this just being a hidden calculation in the background like it has been. So hopefully it'll be apparent enough that people will actually want to engage with it and be encouraged to. So once again, that army moves, presumably on some sort of marathon, into a new region, this time with strong winds of magic, providing +5 per turn. It also adopts the channeling stance, increasing it by a further +15. So it is nice at the channeling stance that before was a bit, I don't know, again, like you'd do it occasionally if you had nothing else to do, and knowing you'd get a bit more magic, but it didn't feel like a very intentional sort of big decision that was going to really change the outcome of a battle, right? It never felt particularly important. But, you know, it was there, and it arbitrarily said you'd have more magic, so that's fine, whatever. But here, it means that basically if you're in channeling stance, you can get the +15, so you can then make sure you can keep your reserves up if you're stationed in an area where the magic isn't very good. So that sounds quite good to me. It sounds like there's more of a reason to do that. So increasing it by a further +15, and is joined by a hero with the magical reserve skill, giving an additional +20% gain whenever the reserves are increasing. So the fact that magical reserves isn't just you'll have a bit more in the tank when you start a battle, you know, that's sort of it's quite bland, but it was good to have, but bland. Now it's actually percentage gain, that will affect your other decisions. So the decisions on your campaign map will be accentuated by having magical reserves with that extra plus 20% gain. So if you're not actually engaging in the systems, then magical reserves isn't, the magical reserves skill, that is, isn't going to affect your magical reserves, which I think is really good. So it encourages you to interact with the, with the mechanic, basically, which I think is how it should be. So its total bonus is plus 22 on the following turn, and that will cap out at 100 within the next few turns if it finally stops moving. So you have a maximum tank of 100, but all of those bonuses that you have, that you normally assign to your characters, are going to increase your likelihood of being able to attain that, rather than just being flat bonuses to stuff that sort of just exists in the background and you never really notice all that much. So this should hopefully make you it should encourage you to sort of engage in the Winds of Magic stuff on the campaign map, which I think is better. I think that's good. It means that you actually have to fold that into your strategy in a bigger way than you normally would. So it's not just do I ambush or not, it's do I ambush or not, or do I march, or do I really need to channel? Do I need that extra magic? Do I need to stay on this side of the border where I can get more magic, or do I want to go to the other side of the border where there's like trees I could hide in? Various decisions you have to make now, which is going to be minor, but because it was quite a passive thing before and mostly ignored, just the fact that it's got that little bit more engagement and nuance to it, I think means you're going to want to interact with it more, and that's going to lead into some decisions. Not all your decisions will be affected by it, but some will. And that just gives you more tactical choice, and more times where, as a player, you're going to go, oh, I did something clever because I'm taking advantage of this mechanic. So those edge cases will make you feel good for making those edge case decisions. And that's a good thing. That's something that should be encouraged. Whether it's a meaningful thing on the battlefield is yet to be seen, but it doesn't matter so long as the player feels like they're, maximising their effectiveness. And I think that's something that was sort of missing with regards to Winds of Magic before. So hopefully this sort of more transparent look at it, I think is good. But it has to be portrayed properly in the UI, or else it's just going to get ignored again. You'll know, oh, magical reserves will give me more magic, I guess, but will you know how to apply that? Is the UI going to tell you enough? Will you know how much you have in the tank, and will that be evident when you click on a character? Will it make it very obvious? And will it, draw attention to it as something you should consider? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So hopefully that's fairly clear. There are numerous other ways to increase or decrease your reserve pool, or impact your enemies. Dilemmas, research, skills, items, post-battle decisions, and so on. So it is nice, again, if this is a more meaningful thing, then all of those dilemmas, research, skills, items, post-battle decisions, all of those decisions, whether to equip or what options to choose, whatever the case may be, that's going to have an impact on this mechanic, and they will be more meaningful because the mechanic is, hopefully more fleshed out and feels like it's playing a more important role. So that's really good. I think that's fantastic. One mechanic will enrich others, and that's how it should be. There should be synergy between these mechanics, and so far it hasn't had that feeling with regards to Winds of Magic. So one of the key factors while playing demon factions is that even if you have no or minimal spellcasters, you'll want to keep an eye on it for the benefits of high reserves and the drawbacks of low. Interesting. So those are: all demon factions receive replenishment rate, leadership, and physical resistance debuffs when at low reserves. So you're going to be forced to pay attention to it and make sure you're loitering in places where there's a lot of magic, or you're channeling when you can, or whatever, because you literally need that magic to live. So, to keep replenishment high and all the rest of it. It's going to affect your chance of survival, basically. And obviously leadership. Leadership is basically the demon's measure of how, of their sort of permanence in the mortal realms, It's a case of you run out of leadership and you start fizzling back into the realms of chaos. So, yeah, that's just a good measure of their sort of how well they're anchored, I guess, to the world. So very cool. At high, the buffs are campaign movement range, and for Tzeentch, it's going to affect his barrier recharge speed, so the more magic you have, the more you can paste over yourself to deflect blows. And yep, that's how it goes. They put it on with a trowel, I've decided, in my head. I think it's just funny. It's why the pink horrors have additional arms. It's so a couple can trowel on their magical barrier. Yeah. I've got to enjoy them somehow. I think they look dumb. I want them to have a bit of purpose, okay? So, remember that Winds of Magic have a lot of implications for Tzeentch and can be manipulated directly. So this is something that I was talking about with the Tzeentch campaign mechanics. He had so many things to affect Winds of Magic, but with Winds of Magic being a bit pointless, it sort of didn't feel like it mattered. I had assumed that they were going to be overhauling that system, as we can now see, but it's good to know that he can actually really play about with this mechanic and really encourage the player to I guess, pay attention to it and engage with it and get results from it, you know? I think that's really great. So for Khorne, is going to be spell resistance. So note that Khorne has no spellcaster units, so this is his only real benefit for them. So the more magic there is, even though he hates magic, his army is still made of it, and so is he, because magic is basically just, you know, chaos juice. So, you know. Nurgle, melee defense, and Slaanesh, it's speed. So, few different things. I love the idea of speed for Slaanesh. Get like a lot of magic you're just zipping around the place. That sounds like a lot of fun. Nurgle, it's a bit boring, I think, melee defense. Melee defense is one of the most boring skills, I think, for me, because it just means the battle will last longer. You'll win more if you have more melee defense than the other guy, but, like, you know, it's a buff, but it's quite a boring one. You know, it doesn't give you, like, flashy results. Like, wow, look how quickly I tore that unit apart. It's, wow, look how little I got torn apart. And I think it's the tearing apart that makes a game like Total War fun. You're supposed to enjoy the sort of the carnage, you know? Melee defense is basically the prevention of carnage. So, I guess it can facilitate carnage, you know? Hammer and anvil, but still, it's fine, it's good, it fits Nurgle, it's just not very exciting. So, what about in battle? This reserves pool represents the amount of magic you have to draw on through the course of the fight. It slowly moves from the reserve pool to your power pool, from which you directly spend it on spells. So that's the same, basically. You have your pool that you can, you know, cast. You know, you need 21 magic. Come on, get me that 21 magic so I can cast a Wind of Death. And, you know, you wait for the tank to fill up and you got reserves down the side. That is the same here. So, I've lost where I am. If the reserves run out, you'll need to either make do with what you have or find a source of magical power on the battlefield. Draining it from an enemy spellcaster with a Tzeentchian ritual, for example. Exciting. The idea of finding a source of magical power on the battlefield, I think, is very cool. That's a very nice idea. Because that hints at the possibility of maybe, like, capturable points around the place where you can sort of, you know, harvest magic from them. Because I think there is a degree of that in survival battles, certainly. If you have another flag, I think it gives you a bonus to your magic reserves as well as giving you ticks of supplies. So, really good, you know, really cool. The idea of being able to go, I need to do more magic. Go get that for me. Go capture that point for me. Men, you know, I think that's a cool thing. That, again, it makes you make decisions. It makes you consider decisions. And in a strategy game, you should be having to work through your decisions. And this is another way that it adds some complexity to how you want to sort of succeed. And I think that's great. So, the opening deployment phase gamble for power from your reserves works much the same, though your total starting power is always a percentage of your starting reserves. Ergo, higher reserves, more power, no matter how bad your luck. So, good. I like that. Your reserves will return to their pre-battle level once you are on the campaign map. This is partly for balancing and fun reasons, but also represents how the winds of magic are never drained, simply channeled. So I like that. I think that's very good, because you'd hate for that sort of tank to be something that exists on the campaign map, that could be depleted by a single spellcaster. You know, it's this ever-present thing. The idea of one spellcaster being able to funnel that magic from one territory would make no sense, you know, lore-wise. The fact that the High Elves had to make the Vortex to constantly siphon off magic and people can still blast spells about, there's just a lot of it present in the world. If one spellcaster could do it, then the High Elves would just have Jeff, the fire wizard, just lighting everyone's fires at night, you know, going down the streets and lighting all the candles, and there you go, demon threat dealt with, you know. So I like that, you know, make sure you can just do magic again and again and again from battle to battle. So, but what if, just an example, you took your army, mortal or otherwise, inside the Chaos Realms where the winds of magic are unpredictable and powerful. A constant roiling storm of devastation and regeneration. A storm of magic, if you will, which is a reference to an 8th edition supplement, as well as, I think they did mention Storm of Magic in a few other places earlier, but I think it's most recently, from that 8th edition supplement. So, Storm of Magic, because of course, you know, the Realm of Chaos is made of the stuff, so there should be a lot to utilise. So Storm of Magic is a new battle rule set for Total War Warhammer 3, one that is always active in the non-Khorne Chaos Realms. In the non-Khorne Chaos Realm, you know how much Khorne hates magic, which is weird because the realm is made of magic, so if it's made of magic, but it's sort of dampened, I don't know, weird, isn't it? It's an odd one, but chaos doesn't have to make sense, so, you know, good for them, I say. So if you are to fight a battle there, other than a survival or quest battle, it will use these settings. So, yeah, that's a few things here that are interesting. So we'll be in the Realm of Chaos doing battles, but not just survival battles. So the survival battles were sort of framed as you find your way into the Realm of Chaos through a ritual or something, and then you do a battle, right, to try and sort of hamstring the Chaos God of which you are battling. But this implies that you will just be roaming around the Realm of Chaos, which really does cement the idea that sort of the north of the map, you'll be going through sort of, you know, Marauder and Chaos Warrior Hell territory and whatever else, but at some point you will just end up going into the Realm of Chaos as part of the map and just doing battles there, which is really cool, I think. That, you know, sounds fantastic. So, you know, whether that's just the Chaos factions that get to fight over it, outside of survival battles, who knows? But the idea that you can just sort of traipse around and conquer parts of the realms of Chaos sounds awesome. So I really like that. So, straight off the bat, reserves are infinite in the Storm of Magic. How quickly you can move them to your power pool will still be important, but you'll never run out of energy to channel into big booms, magical lasers, or spirits. So that is awesome. I think that's a really cool thing, just to have completely free reign to blast people with spells. Of course, I think there's still going to be a slowdown of how much you can channel, because as I'm sure you know from playing, you know, Warhammer 1 and 2, the longer the battle goes on, you know, the more the reserve tank goes down, the slower it is that it accumulates actually in your, like, usable pool. So whether that's going to be in relation to reserves or not, you know, it's we'll have to wait and see. That might be, you might get it the same rate, or it might slow down over the course of the battle. Who knows? But if the battle goes on infinitely, then you're going to have infinite spells to cast, which is very fun. I think that's great. So the Storm of Magic also changes as the battle goes on, each lore having a chance to be the next in Ascendancy. Which lore is currently empowered has a number of effects laid out below, as well as giving you access to the lore's Cataclysm spell as an army ability charged by any spellcasting by either side on the field. Once charged, the change to the next random spell lore begins to count down. You lose access to the Cataclysm spell if the lore changes before you cast it. You can only use this Cataclysm spell if your army has a spellcaster, though the passive effects of an Ascendant lore are still applied without one. So there's a new spell for each lore of magic that you can cast as an army ability, provided you've powered it up during a Storm of Magic battle. So it's not just infinite magic, it's infinite magic and additional spells, which I think is very fun. And, you know, there's always going to be a point where I think any spellcaster would be limited in their ability to, you know, start blasting things. But if their entire, you know, the entire area around them is just a storm of magic, then yeah, they have infinite resources at their disposal. In most cases, I think it would turn a spellcaster inside out in most, you know, stories that have been told, but hey, I think it's just going to assume that's not the case, so you can have a lot of fun blasting stuff with spells, because, you know, rule of fun wins out here. So this sounds really great. Cataclysm spells are ludicrously powerful abilities that mark the end of the lore's ascendancy once unlocked, with one cast available for each side of the battle. They include massive buffs to allied troops, huge persistent heals, or a fair share of devastating thunderstorms and volcanic eruptions. They are simply not very fair. But each side has a you know, a fair chance to use it, right? So, you know, that's pretty great. Here's what each lore gets. Note that there is no requirement to be using that lore on one of your spellcasters. You still get access to the passive buff and Cataclysm spell, so long as you have any caster. There also aren't Cataclysm spells or special effects for every lore in the game, just those laid out below. So this sounds great, this sounds really fun, I love it. It gives like huge modifiers to battles, which I think is brilliant. So, Lore of Beasts. All units become immune to psychology and gain charge bonuses. Hang on, wait, one thing I want to comment on actually. Wait. It said, I think, hang on, is it later? We'll get to it. But if it's only if you have a spellcaster, then does that mean like dwarfs are screwed? Or are they considering runesmiths a spellcaster? Because rune magic is still magic. They are still using the ether to power something, right? It's not they're channeling it. It's that they're hammering it into something because their bodies aren't really capable of channeling magic because of their innate magic resistance. So will they still be allowed to? I hope so, and I think it makes sense that they can. But I'm intrigued. You know, hopefully. It's just an afterthought, but hopefully that'll be the case. You know, runesmiths should be able to take advantage of this. Fingers crossed. Or hammers and tongs and anvils crossed, I don't know. So, Lore of Beasts. Lore of Beasts. I've got dwarfs on the mind now. You can probably tell. So, all units become immune to psychology and gain charge bonuses. So these, the passive bonuses here. That's going to be available for both armies, which means that everybody on either side is going to be immune to psychology and gain charge bonuses. So both armies on the battlefield will be encouraged to really just go for it in terms of getting those charges in. So that's really fun. So Cataclysm spell, Mercius? I have no idea how to pronounce that, but I'm going to go with Merciu. Yeah, Merciu. Hachu. Merciu. Merciu's Monstrous Regiment, which gives the bonus of the Strength of the Wild is imbued on one unit's weapon damage, armor piercing, melee attack, and physical resistance. Now that I think is a bit of a shame. I think a buff is a very boring thing to do for something called a cataclysmic spell, you know, a cataclysm spell. It might be a huge buff, but they could have had it so it summons, you know, a merworm, right? You know, they could have had something crazy like that. You know, it summons a beast. A big one. A big scary one. Something like that would have been more exciting, I think. But, fine. I'm assuming it's a big buff and it'll turn whatever it is into a hell of a beast itself. But still, I think that's a shame. That's the opening gambit for them selling us the Cataclysm spells. But, you know. Lore of Life. All units gain perfect vigor, which, again, does kind of encourage everyone to run around and do a bunch of charging and cycle charging and things, because no one's going to get tired, which is pretty cool. The Cataclysm spell is the Storm of Renewal. A tree sprouts from the ground as raw life energy flows across the battlefield, providing a huge regeneration aura, which I hope is just going to be like a massive tree that's going to stay there persistently. You know, lots of special effects and excitement there. Hopefully. Lord of Death. All units gain armor-piercing melee damage. So that's the, you know, the passive. And the Cataclysm spell is Ashes and Dust. A suffocating dust cloud chokes the life from enemies in a wide area after a short wind-up. That sounds more like it. That sounds more threatening and exciting visually. Maybe not on the tree, but, you know, it sounds exciting. Lore of Fire. All units get bonus melee attack. Cool. And the Cataclysm spell is Magma Storm. Like, now this is what I'm talking about. A massive eruption protrudes from the ground, burning everything in the area in magical fire. Volcano. Just a volcano spell. That is sick. And I want more of that, please. Lore of Heavens. All missile units deal extra damage and extra armor-piercing damage. Cataclysm spell is Thorson's Thunderstorm. A great storm develops above the battlefield, annihilating an area with lightning bolts. These all sound great. Actually, these all sound a lot like spells that I think were in Dragon Age. But hey, I'll take it. Lore of Light. All units gain immunity to physical and magical attacks. Which is, yeah, that's kind of a big deal, actually, especially if you've got like an ethereal army or something. Although actually, magical attacks are different now. There's magical attacks and then there's... because there's magic resist and spell resist now as two separate things. Which makes me wonder how that's going to split up properly. You know, what the ghouls and ghosts are going to get. You know? So, some things are changing in Warhammer 3, so that might not be as good for ethereal units as it first sounds. So we'll have to check in on that again later. So the Cataclysm spell is Time Amok. The flow of time is altered over a portion of the battlefield, improving allies' reload skill, speed, and melee attack. Which, that's a bit boring, because that's just, what's it called? I want to say Boone is Time Warp. I'm just thinking of Curry. Biryani's Time Warp. Something Time Warp. That's just that. You know? Which doesn't sound great. Again, not very flashy. If you got like a volcano and then you got, oh, people will be able to reload quickly. Who cares? You know, that doesn't... No. Everything's got to be flashy here. It's cataclysmic. So, a bit disappointed with that. I'm sure it's going to be a very useful skill and it could turn the tide of battle, but it's not very showy, is it? And I think this stuff should be showy. So, Law of Metal. All units receive bonus armor and missile resistance. The Cataclysm spell is Gehenna's Golden Globe, which is interesting. A great molten sphere emerges from the earth and rolls across enemy forces. Yeah, that's more like it. Lord of Shadow. All the units get faster charge and movement speed. Nice. Cataclysm spell is the Dance of Despair. A haunting tune envelops enemies in the area, reducing their leadership, melee defense, and melee attack. Okay. I mean, audibly interesting maybe. I don't know what the special effect of that would be, but again, it's just a debuff, which I think is a bit sad. But, I mean, these do have the potential. I might be cutting them a bit short, right? I might just be assuming that the special effects will be similar to that of a buff spell in Warhammer 2. You know, just they'll have a glow about them, and that'll be it. I mean, the Law of Light, for instance, for all we know with that, you know, the entire, you know, every unit within that area might get, like, glowing weapons, you know, that radiate light and, like, you know, these... like angelic wings sprout out their backs. Who knows? It might be like crazy over the top and exciting. Or it might be a bit boring. I don't know. It just doesn't sound that exciting, does it? A lot of these don't sound as showy as each other. You know, a buff isn't as exciting as a volcano. It's like, well done. You're a little bit faster on your feet. Cool. He's got a volcano, which I think is a shame, but I don't know. And maybe it's to balance out, I guess all the big spells would be just great at, like, devastating units of, you know, sort of just, like, lots of units. And they wanted to make sure that you didn't just win every single one of these battles by bringing single model entities, you know. It could be a balancing issue there. So, like, a volcano is obviously going to wipe out a unit of spearmen, but it might not do as much damage to, say, a Carnosaur, right? So maybe it's a balancing thing, but I really want them all to be as exciting as each other. So hopefully that'll be the case. You know, we'll have to wait and see what these look like and how it plays out. But in general, just rule of thumb, I think this is awesome. I think this is really cool. I think this gives a huge opportunity to have some, like, really crazy battles take place, which we didn't really have before, but it's contextually appropriate. It's, yeah, you're in the realm of chaos. Yeah, magic is abundant. Go nuts. I think that's really fun to have that excuse, and I like that there's those sort of this sort of excuse to go a bit crazy that isn't tied to quest battles or to you know, the new survival battles. It's essentially like a new game mode, sort of hidden within. There's going to be in certain areas of the map, which is going to make certain areas of the map feel way more unique and diverse and give genuine gameplay variety, which I think is amazing. I think that's really good, and I want to see more of this sort of almost geographically based game mode modifiers, you know. I think that's really cool, because we have variety of units and factions, but variety of battlefields was something that has been lacking. They seem to be addressing it in terms of how a battle plays out and the amount of maps they've done, and sort of the siege rework and all the rest of it. So I think the variety, not just in terms of which faction is being brought to a big, boring square map, but which faction are you bringing to a huge variety of different, you know, different sort of map and battle types, I think is amazing. So huge potential here for some, like, crazy stuff. I mean, we could end up with these sort of battles taking place in siege maps, right? This could just be applied to any battle to sort of modify how it plays out and what your strategies might be and how exciting it could be, you know? There'll be nice sort of valleys and peaks in terms of excitement and variety. I think it's great. So this sounds amazing. So, but what of Khorne? Raging against magic, as he does, he does against everything, that's true, he does rage against everything. What about him? His forces receive further bonuses to their natural spell resistance in a storm of magic, toughening against the unnatural forces around them, but not the benefits of the Ascendant lore. Such is his anger at the storm that Khorne gains the ability to summon demons more easily, allowing for a surprise bloodthirster should your opponent get too cocky. So that's a nice way to combat that, and, you know, in the face of more magic, he throws more rage at it, which I think is good. Also, the horrible irony that all of his armies are still made of magic, so, you know, now I can see why he's so livid all the time, you know? Imagine if you were made out of, oh, I don't know, imagine if you were made out of Piers Morgan, how annoyed you'd be. So, on the flip side, Tzeentch's mastery of magic means that a Tzeentch army in a Storm of Magic battle gets to pick what the first law in Ascendancy will be. So that's really cool. I think that's a really unique thing for Tzeentch to be able to pick a sort of a set of bonuses that will best benefit him. Which you could argue that's him forcing the magic to be to sort of listen to his will, or simply that he knew that that would be the case upon entering the battlefield, right? You know, that sort of gift of foresight, you know, is all intentional. He'd been studying the magic, and he knew that if we start the battle at 20 past noon, then we'll have the correct magic in Ascendancy, which sounds great. So I think that's really, really cool. So his forces have a lot of abilities through armies and characters to increase the rate at which their power recharges from the reserve, making an infinite reserve quite strong. I can imagine. That's all for the Winds of Magic today. Oh, thank you, Winds of Magic. I thought it was Ben, but no, apparently it was the Winds of Magic. It's all for, not from. We'll be back soon with a look at the tasty new laws coming to Warhammer 3, their spells and effects, because of course we haven't learnt about the details about the Lord of Tzeentch, the Lord of Nurgle, or the Lord of Slaanesh yet. So we haven't even heard about Slaanesh yet, or Nurgle, so, you know, maybe we'll learn about them before their spells, or maybe we'll get another blog just with all the spells, or maybe they'll split it up into bits. It's still a while before release, so who knows. But yeah, this is awesome. Pardon me, this is awesome. This is really cool. I'm really excited about this. I think this will really help, just more variety, more excitement. It's really leaning into the spectacle of Warhammer, and I think now that they have like all the factions, I think they can really lean into that stuff. You know, everything's there. They have all the pieces. Now they can just give all of those different players just sort of like some insane, sort of infrequent bonuses, and yeah, really just lean into the bigger, more spectacular conflicts of Warhammer and what that might look like, which I think is amazing. I think that's really good. I'm so thrilled about this. I'm so thrilled about this. Not just making a boring mechanic more interesting, but doing that alongside adding just some completely unforeseen bonus nonsense. I think is great. They could have just said, "Oh, if you're in Realm of Chaos, I guess the reserve won't run out," and then stopped. You know, they could have stopped there, and we would have gone, "Oh, that's cool," because yeah, there's a lot of magic there. But no, they got above that. So I'm thrilled. This is really good. This is really good. If this is what the delay to their release date is giving us, then yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with them dragging their heels if we get more of this sort of thing. So guys, if you've enjoyed this, please do comment, like, and subscribe. And I'd love to hear what you think about all this. You know, there's a lot of information there, and a lot of knock-on effects of how this can affect different factions and other mechanics, and how you might behave on a campaign map and all sorts. You know, there's a lot here. There's a lot here to consider. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And also, if you're looking to pre-order Warhammer 3, then you can go to nexus.gg/Janet, and I get a kickback for that. So it's a good way to support the channel, and at no extra cost to you. And it's a Steam key, not an Epic one. But I'm sure most of you are looking for Steam keys anyway, because you've got the rest of the trilogy on there already, probably. But anyway, so I guess that's it. Take it easy, I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.